Well, the discussion that's come up lately has been the whole drone situation, particularly in New Jersey, but perhaps it's spreading many other places. So I want to discuss this a little bit to see what we think about it. I know Congressman Jeff Van Drew seems to have kind of made a little goof up here where he basically has indicated that he thinks it's due to Iranians, and apparently he has a highly placed confidential source with high security clearances told him this. I'm very skeptical of this idea, as I think most people. Of course, the government in general, the Defense Department and the White House has sort of taken the attitude that, well, there's nothing to see here, nothing to worry about. They know that, but we don't know what it is. And then later on, they're trying to explain it all as just conventional civilian aircraft that somehow have have been flying around and been misidentified. Although I think that's also very unlikely given the number of witnesses, including government witnesses and law enforcement witnesses and the like. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I think we'll have to, kind of go a little bit further. Now, one thing that's got me concerned a little bit is, of course, this sort of plays into the whole UAP type issue, of course. I mean, that's one of the things that you have to consider when you're dealing with this sort of situation. However, most of these objects, as they've been described, don't seem to at all match the characteristics of a UAP if the word in A, the letter A, excuse me, is for anomalous. If it really means aerial, well, yeah, anything in the air that we don't know what it is. But I think anomalous, what we really mean nowadays, and it's been redefined specifically, are those things that don't have normal prosaic explanations, like, say, drones. So that's kind of where we are on this one. So I think that we'll have to kind of, take a look here and see what we think. My assessment at this point, based on all the things we've seen and the pictures we've seen, is that there are actual drones here that are at the core of the issue. Uh, but at the same time, I think that you'd have, of course, if enough people are stirred up to be looking at objects in the sky that are somewhat strange or troublesome, if an airplane were to fly over at a certain altitude, that might get mistaken for it. There may be other things out there that might also be. But most of these are probably some sort of a drone, we would think, except the problem we have is the number of them. Well, certainly there appear to be formations that occur. So that is one of the things that kind of gives us a bit of a problem here, is that if when they say there's 180 sightings, well, yeah, but how many drones does it take to have different people see it and report over a period of time 180 sightings, even though it might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 drones that do it? So that's one of the aspects we have to consider in this whole situation, is multiple reports due to a single event of a single drone flying over. In fact, and of course now even President-elect Trump has got into the act too. So at any rate, but if you like these videos, please give me a like, look for more subscriptions, and of course you can click the bell for notifications, or you can also follow me on Rumble. So anyhow, so that's kind of the situation as I see it at this point. I don't think the general these things are in the UAP area, really. I think they are probably actual drones. One thing, the sound of many of them apparently have audible sounds that sound like engines. And in fact, these drones apparently maybe aren't really electric powered drones like many of the small hobbyist drones are. These may be powered by engines. And that would be the sort of thing we're looking at here. I think so. That's one thing I would like to point out, that's what kind of makes them different. Normal UAPs either are completely silent or they kind of have a whine to them or something like that, very high frequency type whine sometimes. And these don't seem to have that characteristic at all. So that's kind of that's a basic assessment I have at this point. The problem is who could be flying them. Some people think it's the government, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense at this point, because if it was, I presume whoever that agency would contact the authorities and say, hey, it's us, and this is project such and such, and and then they'd have some kind of a public way of describing it. I don't think anything that's really classified system would be flight tested over such a heavily populated area. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's another thing to consider. Um, in some ways, this event seems to be reminiscent of one about, let's say 40 years ago, the Hudson Valley UFO incidents, which are kind of a historic case of this sort of thing, again, where you had a lot of reasonably high quality witnesses seeing a lot of anomalous phenomena, which were never adequately explained, of course. And so we'll have to see what happens here. I mean, there have been talks about shooting them down, but if they happen to be just a private airplane flying over that's being misidentified because they don't know what the altitude is, and you actually shoot down a private airplane, that wouldn't be too good. I think the best thing I could see for a real drone, that is something that's flying more or less at drone altitudes, at drone speeds, if that's what we're dealing with, I would suggest just getting a good high quality helicopter up and follow it. Better than shooting it down would be to actually follow it to wherever it goes to when it's done and find out who's operating it. Supposedly the electronic means of disrupting these things and intercepting them have not been successful, which may indicate, I don't know, that's where you get in the idea of an adversary. But okay, yes, you could have a ship off the coast, but if that's it, then you just need to chase the thing back to the ship and find out whose ship it is. So that's a doable issue. It's feasible. So I don't know why we can't do that. And so this will be interesting to see how this evolves over time. But we'll keep up with it, I guess. I don't think anybody has an answer. I've seen some good people, that for instance, Cold Heart's done a couple of shows on this. I've looked at there on YouTube now, and also I think originally on News Nation. And they're rather interesting, but even they can't come up with any real answer to what this is. It's hard to believe that a company is flying these things and hasn't, come forward at this point. They don't seem to be of a nature that would be. They seem like they'd be fairly expensive drones, actually. So that's one of the things I find rather interesting, that they would have to be kind of expensive, I would think. So anyhow, I'll that's kind of where I am on this at the moment. We'll have to just kind of stay tuned in. But on other topics, well, I guess on my last video I covered the Syrian situation, and of course, at the moment it looks like nothing too radical's happened yet. Their big focus has been on going into the prisons in Syria and trying to get people out and finding the people that died there. And I guess some records were found, and they're still looking for this one American journalist and all that. So that's good to anybody that gets freed. And I guess for the moment, our terrorist friends that are running the place are trying to pretend a little bit like they're good guys, but I think that's probably the original appearance. I think they may end up being something else in the end. And meanwhile, Turkish type forces apparently are starting to go after the Kurds. And of course, that's probably their main interest here anyhow, the ongoing conflict between the Kurds and the Turkish government, and the history of the terrorist attacks and that sort of thing. So that's going to be an ongoing issue, I think. The thing is, the U.S. is supporting the Kurds, and I guess our Secretary of State Blinken met with Erdogan, so let's see how that plays out and see if we can dissuade him or not from massacring the Kurds, because one of the problems is the Kurds are guarding all the ISIS prisoners, and if the Kurds are defeated, the ISIS prisoners presumably will be freed, and, well, ISIS will be back, and there'll be another contestant for the battle for who runs Syria. And finally, at this point, apparently the Russian forces are still there, and I guess have kind of holed up mostly in their bases. There's also, I think they're in negotiation with the new rulers of Syria to see if they can keep their bases, and I guess the outcome of that is indeterminate, although it does look like a lot of effort on their side to be packing up equipment and leaving, which to some extent makes sense, given that, I don't think their previous role is going to be. I don't think their role is going to be having anything to do with controlling Syria. If they are allowed to stay, they probably just want to maintain their two bases, their air base and their port, in order to have a footprint in the Mediterranean. and or else they may actually be required to leave. But for the moment, it looks like nobody's really trying to exactly forcibly push them out. So that's an interesting development too. And and now there's a bit more discussion going on about will the Israelis actually launch a follow-on attack to go after the Iranian nuclear program, and that's being discussed, whether that's going to be an item or will that be something that will happen in the early Trump administration. On the other hand, we don't know exactly what Iran is going to do with their nuclear program. Are they going to go ahead and speed ahead to make a few nuclear bombs before the new administration comes in, or are they going to hold up and wait and see what's heading their way? So that's another issue we're going to be watching in the days ahead. So I'll be wrapping this up for now and be posting this on YouTube and Rumble as always, and the addresses of my social media accounts are in the description below. As always, I post most frequently my between video posts on X. So all for now.